Welcome back, beautiful souls. We have for you today such a remarkable guest, Etali of Sustain Cameroon. Now, we recorded this episode a few months back, and I was so moved that when we hung up the call, Etali and I began not only a friendship, but a partnership. Now, I've partnered with Etali to create an enrichment impact program, one that will require me to go to Cameroon, Africa to work directly with their organization, with their girls and boys. As many of you know, I have spent my entire life shifting my energy from survival to self-mastery, and my mission in life is to empower others to be able to do the same. And so I ask you, if this episode moves you the way that it moved me, please donate to Sustain Cameroon to help us come together. In the words of Etali, women have the right to be represented everywhere, and the grooming of leaders begins at grassroots level. To help us come together in Africa, as well as provide scholarship and schooling that can aid in both healing and income generation for their students, we need to raise $10,000. And you can help us do this by heading over to either the link in my bio on Instagram or http sustaincameroon.wordpress.com. I'm going to spell that out for you because that's that was horrendous of me. sustaincameroon.wordpress.com. And like I said, or you can find the link in my bio under the link tree of my Instagram account. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I'm just can't wait for you to just soak in everything Etali said and brought to us. And without further ado, Fellow Hollow is going to take us in. Such an honor. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is mine. And I am so grateful that you have given us the opportunity to speak today. I want to say that I'm so grateful. You said something which took my attention, that a lot of people are doing awareness. That's very beautiful. And coming on today, I think we shall be able to look at maybe the alternatives that can also be able to add more weight to the education that is already being done in these areas, in these communities.
Yes.
I think it is just so well fitted that today I'm speaking with you. So thank you so much again for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. The honor is all mine. So you guys have an NGO, which is a non-government organization, and you are called Sustain Cameroon. Is that correct?
Yes, you are correct.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about Sustain Cameroon and what it is that you guys are working so hard to achieve?
Okay. Thank you so much. Again, I want to say that Sustain Cameroon is a grassroots organization that is focused on that is primarily focused on ending or contributing to end harmful practices and cultures that perpetrate violence against women, girls, and orphans and vulnerable children. And we are working in the northwest region of Cameroon, and we actually are working with those very deprived categories, victims, potential victims, and survivors of child early and forced marriages, sexual exploitation, modern slavery, and gender-based violence. And we actually are running a current project now, which is ending child early and forced marriages in communities across the Northwest. And this project, we are working mostly with child brides and also with at-risk girls, in trying to giving them alternative livelihood opportunities that can build their resilience and also their financial stability to be able to meet their basic needs, which is one of the issue we identified that is as at the root of the challenges or the abuses which they suffer. Context-wise, in our context in Africa, they have made it to seem as if we are working as if the continent is a poor continent, especially in the rural areas. But we know that our continent is so blessed with a lot of with enormous resources. But these resources are not actually being able to be exploited to meet the basic needs of people, even right to the grassroots level. So these communities are often they're often left behind in the development flow, and because of this, there are dejected communities, and there are communities that are engulfed into poverty and also some kind of lack of social amenities. So we believe that, like you said in your introductory opening sentence, that a lot of education is ongoing, and we know that, like for us in an organization, we believe that when we give this education, we should be able to give them reasonable access to opportunities that can permit them to outgrow and come out of their standards, or their livelihood standards, which are being affected because of their inability to have access to resources, or because they come from poor backgrounds, or because the families cannot just be able to support them in their education. These are some of the things that we are trying to see. And we believe in the strongest form that for us to be able to actually combat this sexual exploitation or the harmful practices and cultures, we need to be able to get back to these communities to give these households access to livelihood opportunities that can permit them to have a sustainable source of support that can enable them send their children to school, and that can also be able to avail these girls from their challenges that they face in these communities.
That's incredible. I guess my big question is, I feel overwhelmed just hearing you talk about the challenges that you guys are facing. So where do you begin? How do you reach out into the communities? And, where do you start with the education?
We believe that the right holders are the men who are decision makers at the grassroots level. And they are the same people who craft these laws that either expose or that keep women at relegated positions in the society. So we believe that education starts at that grassroots level with those decision makers. We work at the grassroots with local authorities. We work with religious authorities. We work with men and women, men and boys in communities to encourage them to take the lead in confronting those harmful practices and traditions, and also being ambassadors or advocates to promote the rights and the welfare of women and girls. So we work with them. We work with the church leaders. We work with these traditional councils and religious and traditional rulers to educate them, to be able to look at those laws or those practices which do not really have an impact on the community, that really do not have an impact on the life of the women, that really do not have an impact on them, the decision makers. Those things that do not have a value in the context. We are trying to look at how they can be able to revise. So it is at the grassroots, because if we believe that at the grassroots, if the grassroots decision makers, what I'm trying to say here is that what we have as modern day governance begins at the grassroots. The grooming of leaders begins at the grassroots. When women are not able to be represented in the social construct or of the community or the society in which they belong, it is automatic that they cannot be represented in the other, at the national or at the regional and national levels, or even at international levels. That's why we find them very limited in representation, and we find it almost like, they say this country has made some people, women are 30% represented in the parliament or 50%. It becomes some wonderful news. That is not news. I believe that women have the right to be able to be represented fairly in every sphere. That's beginning at the grassroots. And if we cannot do this at the grassroots, then there is no way that at the level of at the national and international level, there's no way that they can be represented. So we begin to educate at that grassroots level. And then we believe that only education alone cannot be able to give the results or the impact we are looking at. So we think that giving them alternative livelihood support, as being able to provide them access to economic empowerment, like income generation, like training in business practices, and also in other forms of a support that can actually give them something concrete, that can give them something that's the practical needs of the people. They need practical needs, because if we see them, one of the things that we have also realized, or which we all know, even all, we know that women are actually not having access to productive resources. And if they are able to if they're only going to be depending on their spouses or their husbands to make a living, then that's where the problem is, because they will not be able to make decisions on their own. So we are looking at the way that we are balancing this education as well as giving them practical needs, so that they can be able to pursue that which they are hunting after.
I couldn't agree more with everything that you said. I have the firm belief that the only way for the advancement of humanity in general, like as a whole around the world, is for people to come together. And I believe that you have to start educating the children, like what you said, at a grassroots level, because the way that our children are raised, when they witness their mothers being treated in a certain way, they grow up with these belief patterns. And that's what I'm hearing, is that you guys are, intercepting at a young age with the
Yes.
young men, in order to help them understand that, we need to change these behaviors. We need to shift these patterns into positivity and just create a sustainable economy through community of mutual respect and love. I think wow.
That's very correct. That's very correct.
Yeah.
Because, like you are saying, let me put what you are saying in other words. You are saying that the socialization process that has been the bedrock of the society, has formed this hardcore belief system that has made men to always be men to be placed at the higher strata, and women also at the lower strata. And it is going to be transmitted if there's not, if we are not able to cut this at that level, at that primary level. It is going to be transmitted onto generations, and these generations that we are living are generations that have been groomed in that, to believe that women are responsible for reproductive roles, and men are also responsible for productive roles. Because if you come to our context here in Cameroon, for instance, especially in the Northwest, you realize that even the women, when they even get into selling, they come back, they have to report to their husband what they are able to do, what they were able to raise as income, so that it gives the husband the authority to decide how that money is spent. Mm-hmm. So these are practices that continue to be transmitted. And as the children are growing up and seeing these practices, they are growing up to learn them, and also growing up to know that this is how we are going to be treating our wives as we grow up, or this is how a girl will grow up to believe that, okay, this is how my mother was doing with my father, I have to grow up to be doing it the same way. So yes. You are saying, we need to attack those hardcore belief systems that have been truncated, that are already entrenched in our socialization process.
Yes, exactly. And demonstration is one of the most effective ways, I think. And that's, again, that's what I love about, what I've heard you guys are doing is you are actively demonstrating, positive reinforcement and behavior. You're stepping in, you're talking to the young boys, but you're also demonstrating what it means to be a part of the community, in the sense that everyone supports one another. And when kids see that, they then begin to I don't want to say imitate it, but they embrace
Yes,
that.
they embrace them. That's right.
Yeah,
That's correct.
yeah, no, I think that that's incredible. I was just really curious, because I have spoken with another person, Moses. They have an organization over in Nigeria, and we were discussing recently, about female genital mutilation. How does that, like, how have you found that it affects the men and women and children that you're working with?
Well, in Cameroon, for instance, the context of FGM or female genital cutting is we have it also functional, but we believe in a context that I'm in, that's in the Northwest region, we do not really actually have it very recurrent, but we have it existing in some other areas, like in from statistics that I found online. You find it happening somewhat towards the northern part, and it's also some part of the southwest region of the country, where it is a tradition which I don't know, it's a culture which actually affects a lot of. We have very little or spotted cases. So, it's not really a strong culture in our context. If we can have it there, you see that we actually do not really have like that's why we say our interventions sometimes do not really touch on that so much, but we take them alongside as a group of cultures or practices which are being meted on the women. But however, we also carry out education and awareness to in respect to these various practices. And in the context where they are existing, you realize that some of these girls, you realize that it is the women who are instigators of these acts because they went through it. They want other children to go through the same process. So the board education will go towards those who are practicing it. That's the women who are propagating or who insist on doing it because they experience it in their lives. So we try as much as possible to enable them to be able to see that the health value, or the implications on the girl child for this acts of genital mutilation do not really have a good implication in terms of health wise. So we just bring them alongside the other cultural practices and make them to understand that these are some of those things that we have to let go, and also to enable these girls to grow to full width and to experience all the beauty that the Lord has given to them.
No, that's fantastic. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So gosh, I'm like, I'm like, what do I ask next? I have so many questions. I don't even know where to begin.
Just go ahead.
How did you become involved? How did you, what brought you to the table? How did you become involved? How did Sustain Cameroon begin?
Okay, thank you. It's a very, very long journey. I'm so happy you have asked that question. I grew up in a context where I don't know if I could call it, I was placed from my community by my father. I was given out to my sister in the city to grow up with her and have education. And I became an orphan and at an early age. And the life that I experienced was a life of a lot of tribulation and challenges because I didn't finish up growing up. So it gave me a background to looking at working to see how I can support orphans, particularly, and also women who are growing up with almost like widows or women in disadvantaged situations. And throughout as I grew, I continued education. By the time I came out of I'm just trying to be giving summary so that I don't take so much time in telling you what happened. And
No,
as I left, yes, as I left the university, I came out. I became interested in working in the area of development, and I was most even specifically focused on doing conflict management. So at that level, I tried to do some issues to get involved into services as a voluntary, working as a volunteer with organizations that were offering services to empower communities through ending conflicts and violence. So I also pioneered the creation of some organizations that were working to specifically for gender-based violence and education of women and empowerment of women. So I grew up from 2005. I had that. I got 2004, 2005. I already engaged in development activities, and it was in the area of women empowerment. So, and that is how I got into it. By 2009, 2010, I started thinking about coming up with an initiative. Sustain Cameroon was coming as an addition because I realized that a lot of the work that we were doing was so much focused all around advocacy, focused around awareness creation, but our communities were not being changed, or the lives of the individuals are not being changed. Because with awareness of their laws, with awareness of their rights, those ones cannot put food on their table. So we're looking at giving them practical needs that can be able to enable them as they are going along, as they grow up along. They should be able to meet their basic needs, because with the absence of those needs, like for instance, you may have somebody that is rescued, for those that do rescue, or some that are being sensitized or education, and then they come out of their abusive conditions. They can be in the context. Some can be re-trafficked, they can be remarried, they can be exposed to vulnerable situations because they do not meet their needs. So, and their communities cannot provide because they don't have those social amenities that can give them, or that can empower them, or that can permit them to grow up building resources that can permit them to be able to meet their educational, health, and other social needs. So we came up on board now with Sustain Cameroon to be more that we wanted to tilt a bit and to be weighted more on their practical needs, as to give them access to livelihoods that can permit them to raise to build their financial strength and capability, and permit them to meet their basic needs. So we are not saying that we are doing it in isolation. We're also doing it, also increasing an awareness on their basic rights. So that is why we came on board. And that is why, if you look at what we are doing today, we are trying to be able to permit some of these girls who were victims of early marriage as child brides. We are trying to permit them to have access to resources. We are permitting them. We are building opportunities for them to build resources, to create wealth for themselves that can enable them break that cycle for their children. That their children will not grow up to repeat the same, or to fall into the same situation that they were while they at their own time that they experienced it. So we want to break that chain from that level. We are using them, even though we are targeting them, that's so that we can use them as role models. But at the same time, we are also waiting on those. We are putting a lot of weight on those that are vulnerable, those who are growing, those that are still growing up to get to that age of vulnerable, that are being vulnerable to such practices. So that is why Sustain Cameroon came into existence. And from 2011, we got legalized as an entity. And we started there. We started with child protection activities in some communities. And God was leading us on until we got to this level that we are also able to be making some little bit of impact in our communities. And we are also seeking to do more in our strategy is rooted only to the grassroots communities. We want everything to begin from there and be coming out into the cities and going into at the national and international level. So we work with grassroots organizations or community-based groups or faith-based organizations at that community level to implant them as cardinal intervention or implementing structures that would be able to meet the needs of these children or these women and orphans and vulnerable children in their communities.
No, that's incredible. I mean, that's such a it's just such a huge subject, and just feel there's so many, there's so many ways that you can approach such a topic, and there's so many shoots that offset, so many different directions. And one of the things I'm most curious about, I get curious about how other people, other countries, other organizations approach PTSD, and how do you educate the people that you're working with on post-traumatic stress, and how do you guys address changing the behavior patterns and the trauma so that they can embrace a new life, or so that they can embrace education and, move through the past in order to create a new life for themselves? So how do you guys approach that?
Okay, thank you. In terms of PTSD, we believe that it can only be sustainable in contexts where we have some of these people identified and trained. So they offer them training in PTSD, and we also try to network with other organizations and international individuals and partners that are willing to give us or offer us some interesting strategies or approaches that can bring them out of it. And we try to train. When we train now, we get one of the strongest tool we want to also believe to get them out of this is we also try to create. We are also hoping that we could create forms of shelter or rescue homes that these children are brought into, and then with the support of donors and partners, we are able to create some of these rescue homes that will bring them there. And then we also try to introduce these trainings to them. And we are also rooted in the Word of God. The forgiveness and love is one of the things that we are trying to introduce to them. It has always been a victim that has been always victimized. The perpetrators are always looked at with bitterness and with anger, and people who experience these issues of abuse will always, when those names will come to mention, they will always have to see these things reoccurring. So we are trying to do it on a two-way prong. We are trying to enable this, walk them out. That's the healing process of these victims out of the traumatic situation. And we believe that one of the strategies is also to make them seem to love and to forgive. We need that. We know forgiveness is of the Lord, so we know that you have to do your part in forgiving and looking at that offender as somebody that was experiencing or that had something. Because to us, we are trying to look at it in the form that these people who are perpetrators are also having. They also have something. They also need to be healed of whatever is pushing them to do it. It is something that is at the back. There's a situation that created that room for them to have. So we need to also bring them on board to be able to see how we can at least create that kind of feeling where they themselves can be like actors that will go out to propagate and preach against these acts. So it is a kind of complex kind of system that we are trying to introduce, and we want that we should introduce that belief that belief system, so that they can be able to go through this PTSD and also be able to be recognized, despite the fact that they were sinners or they committed these offenses. How do we accept them? How do we place them in the context of the society? When we look at them, or we don't want to accept them, we have to accept them in kind of way and try to let them acknowledge and also be able to see that they have to be remorseful make, like we talk about, there's a word they use, a word in a context, in a Bible context, a word we use that gives us the opportunity, that gives them what we call walking your is it this word is running away from me. They have to be able to walk their penance for what they did. Let me just use that word. It's not the right word I was looking for. So we need to also, as we create a forum where we can be able to also identify them as people suffering from certain things. Yes, we identify them as people suffering from so there is something that is affecting them, that is making them to behave that way. So we need to work with them as well as we are working to complete the healing process of those that were victimized. We need to also work with those that are the perpetrators of those acts. So it is a kind of way that we are trying. It is one of the package. It is one of the package that we use as training them and bringing them through the process of healing. And also by that time we're bringing them the process of healing, we also try to bring them opportunities that can help them to avail themselves of the challenges that they were facing or whatever. And then also, I hope I'm not talking too much, but also we're also working at the level of trying to see how to redeem the image of the woman. To redeem the image of the woman, because if you look at the way the woman is portrayed in the media, the dignity of the woman is dragged down, and women will continue to be looked at as objects or toys to be played with. So there is much work that we are doing around that area. We are not targeting the effects. We want to look at the root causes of some of these situations, because what we have on media that is being projected as image of women, you realize that women are portrayed almost naked on the media, and it's almost like the sex trafficking ring is they are using them. These people who music producers, you look at the way they project women. This is one of the highest institutions or the highest industry that really denigrates the image of a woman. So we need to be able to work at that level. So there's so much that is embedded that can help us to be able to give complete and total healing to these women that are affected by either trafficking or sexual exploitation and all of that. So there's much that we are trying to unfold, and we are trying to do it, and we are hoping that with the collaboration of partners who will buy the concept, we can be able to do more, and we will spend a lot of time trying to redeem the image of the woman, especially online and especially through the media. So there is much. Mm-hmm.
No, I love it. You are 100% speaking my language. I look at it, when I think of sex trafficking, when I think of sexual abuse, when I look at the history of the world, going back 30, 35,000 years ago, I don't see it as, it's not one-sided. I don't think that people hurt people just to hurt people. I think that hurt people hurt people. And, I was asked recently, why don't I attack or try to prosecute or punish the people who hurt me? And, I always looked at it when I look back, and I've never thought anything different when I say that, kids raising kids or kids trying to survive, those are people that they're stuck in survival mode, and they're not trying to hurt people. They're trying not to be hurt. And that people who exploit other beings, that they do so from a place of pain and fear themselves. And so
that's right.
I think that, if you want to end violence between men and women, I believe that if you want to end human trafficking, if you want to end practices that, are morally speaking, abhorrent, that you have to come at it from a place of love and compassion, because you can't point fingers and use shame and blame to try to bully people into seeing things your way. I think that you have to help them heal and get to a place where they don't feel the need to defend themselves. Because when people, I mean, if you think about it, when you corner a wild animal, you know, they're going to strike out, right? Because they
That's
think
right.
that they need to save their life. And humans are no different. When we feel cornered, when our livelihoods are challenged, when we are placed in a position of having to support other people or defend other people, you know, we can't think past this very moment. We can't see long-term down the road. We can only think from the place with which we're at. And so I think that that's why so many people hurt other people. And that's, you know, sex trafficking is prevalent, and, you know, violence against women, but there's also violence against men.
That's
And
right.
so I love what you had to say about all of it, because I just, you know, I mean, I couldn't get on board fast enough with what you guys are doing and what you're about. Cause
Yeah.
I'm on the same train, man. So I think that that's so beautiful.
I thank the Lord for that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's so cool. So what do you guys have planned for the future? I mean, where is it that you want to take this, and how are you planning to get there?
Our desire is to be able, you know, like I was talking to you, our desire is to be able to create sustainable structures, alternative sustainable structures in the midst of these communities. And these structures, we want to be recruiting and identifying and bringing these girls on it, to be able to permit them to build, to heal, and also be able to have access to skills. These skills can permit them to be able to meet or to sponsor or to have their education continued, or to continue the education of their children, and also to support their siblings and their families out of difficult contexts that have made them to remain perpetually in that situation. So our desire is to be able to create these sustainable structures, and we are looking at trying to institute small groups, small financial institutions or groups within these communities that will be supporting in the financial strength, that will build in the financial strength, and at the same time we also have a structure for healing and empowerment. That will have vocational training centers also established and all of that. So we have a picture of trying to do a lot of things to them. And if we were having that opportunity today, we will be able to work to implant these structures in the heart of those communities and creating them opportunities to function within those communities, because a lot of them are being ripped out of these communities because they have access to nothing, and they don't even when they finish elementary education. I think the parents will jubilate that their children have, maybe they have, in our context, I will call it first school living certificate. They'll be jubilating that they have done something great for the children, and the children are left on their own. So we need to be able to bring them back when they are coming out of these structures. Do we need to continue sending them, some of them, to school? Do we need to enroll some of them into skills, trades, and vocational training? And then those that are coming back that we are rescuing from, that we rescue from these communities or from the cities, who want to be, because in the cities they live with their caregiver, they live in the cities with their masters and mistresses, and a lot of them, you see them, they will be living there hoping that at the end of 3 years, you hear somebody says is going to set you up with a sewing machine, or they are going to pay you 100 or 200,000, and 200,000 is an equivalent of about close to $500 for 2 years, that somebody will live with you, and you are giving that person 200,000 as they call it, as a form of settlement. So if for two years on the line, ongoing, somebody will give or dedicate services to you, and you are giving that person maybe a sewing machine that costs about 60 to 100,000, which is about $150 or $100 in some contexts. You are giving that as a settlement to that child, and you find they're not even having all the complete settlement, because when you buy a machine and give to somebody without giving or establishing that person in that context, the person is is likable to be re-trafficked into another community or likable to be exposed to either sexual exploitation and all of that because they want to survive. So we are trying to entrench our work is only at the root in the grassroots. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the things we are trying to do. We believe that when we are able to create a culture of wealth creation amongst them by giving them income generation, giving them skills, trades building, we are going to permit them to be able to build the wealth that they need to build. And then they also have to break that cycle in their families because they can continue the cycle. They will even give birth to children that can even continue in the same cycle. So we want to be able to break it at that level. And then at the same time, we want to build strong networks of men in those communities that will be able to interfere, that will confront violent practices or cultures or whatever that will expose these children. So those are some of the things we are looking forward to doing. In our context, when we have these things on ground, we can really sigh a sigh of relief that we've done something to these communities. And because this is what they need, and that is what can play a long way, that can go a long way to reduce and even eradicate these practices in these communities. Let me even just tell you something. In our context here, there is a culture, since I told you that when children are able to complete elementary school, some of them, there are some communities that actually have the secondary and higher education. Mm-hmm. But some of these schools do not, some of them do not have adequate infrastructures. Some of them do not have adequate teachers that can be able to teach in these institutions. And some of these children, when they live like that, the parents will prefer to look for their relations or to look for their relatives or to look for friends or family friends whom they think that are living in the city that can offer these children those opportunities. And when these children have, they place these children with them in the cities, and at the long run, you realize that the children become either exploited sexually by those that are being sent to, or they are exploited as laborers. They go out to do, they go hawking along the streets for some of these families, or they spend their time just doing caregiving work in those homes. So at the end of the day, you realize that the hope that these parents are having by sending these children, because they also believe that by the children being in the cities, it gives them the opportunity to raise income that can permit them in their home or in their communities or back in the villages or in the communities to be able to have access to a little bit of finances that can permit them to exchange this for other daily basic needs. So you realize that these children, some of these parents are the center, they are really are the ones even perpetrating some of these acts of trafficking and acts of they are playing four roles as a perpetrators without even knowing that that's what they are doing. So it is so pathetic that we live in a context that it's almost agreeable in almost all the communities in the Northwest. Is find parents sending children to the cities after they complete their elementary education. You find them sending them to the cities so that they come to the cities to live with their friends or they live with their the relatives and all of that, and life becomes so difficult for them because sometimes when you pair somebody to somebody that the person also is struggling to make a living in the city, it creates a burden on that person, and it's already a rift that is created, and this child in struggling to survive may get involved or may indulge in other things. So we need to be able to break that from the grassroots. So that is our core belief, is that at that grassroots, if they are able to have access to these resources, as we are giving, we're identifying families that are these children, those vulnerable families. We try to settle them, making them have livelihood opportunities within their context that can permit them survive. I think we'll be contributing a serious quota to reducing these acts of trafficking, these acts of violence against women in their context.
No, that's just absolutely remarkable. I love hearing about the way you're assisting with family planning. I think, I see it a lot even over here in Canada. I've seen it a lot in the United States. When people don't understand, people have babies and then they don't plan for the future, they, and then they run into problems later on. And, they have the children, they love their children, but then unfortunately, without the financial means, without the family support, without the connection, without understanding, kids end up in foster care, they end up, orphaned, they end up living on the streets. And then that whole cycle starts once again. Right. So
that's right.
Yeah. And I think, again, I see it, all over the world. Right. And,
Yes.
and I think, once again, education, reaching out and, showing support and demonstration is just, you're planting seeds, and, things might not change tomorrow, but
Yeah.
5 years from now, 10 years from now, this is the hard work. You're in for the long haul. Yeah.
That's right. That's correct.
Oh, well, I hate to cut this short. It has been such a privilege and such a joy having you on today. I'm so honored to speak to a like-minded individual. It's always fun for me to, be fully on board with the conversation.
That's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
It's so wonderful.
Oh, how can people find you? How can they donate? How can they learn more about your organization? How can they reach out to be of assistance to you?
We are actually trying to. We have our social media pages, and we also we have our email, which they can write to us directly. That will be the first thing. We have an email address, which I don't know if I gave it to you, but the email address is sustain, as in sustain, and then cmr@gmail.com. That is our email for the organization that we use to reach out to the people. They can also find us on LinkedIn, as much as also on Twitter, which we are speaking now.
Okay.
And we can also be found on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, which is Sustain CMR. That's facebook.com/Sustain CMR. And then for Twitter is twitter.com/Sustain Cameroon. And then for LinkedIn, I think I have to share the link that they can get to us. And then also we have an account with our bank here in Cameroon. It's an international bank as well. It receives international donation. Maybe we have to also put that account number for any donations that we want to come in. And then once in a while, we also have an opportunity to raise funds through the global giving platform, which will be coming up in September. And if we are able to have these donations come in, it will help us to go a long way to contributing our own quota in making the world a better place, especially for women and children. So I think that is how they can get to us. And then if they want to get us through telephone number, you have our telephone numbers for the organization, which is +237 678 172617. Or that's +237 678 172617. Alternatively, they could also call +237 6999 88498. Those are just contacts. We can be able to establish a relationship, and we also see how we can work alongside to be able to reach out, to be able to support those that we want to reach out to them in our context.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. Thank you for joining us here today. And thank you just for being such an inspiration to myself and to those around me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I didn't even believe that. I'm not feeling satisfied like for real, because a lot of things are happening in our context that we need to contribute in changing. But maybe we lack the appropriate approaches to using to intervening. And if you look at it, I'm sorry to maybe still take you a bit to say that a lot of things we address from the causes or the effects. We do not actually go to the roots to address from the roots. And a lot of interventions are only addressing from the effects, and then we are abandoning the roots. What is it that is causing? When you address the effects and you don't touch the roots, know that it's going to you are going to have a reoccurrence and have a multiplication of those situations happening in the same context and communities. So I really want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to maybe even just see a little bit of it. And what I'm also pleading that the audience or whoever will be listening, they try to select what is useful and what is not useful. That one can be dropped. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak today with you. And I'm so grateful that the Lord has made it to be. You cannot imagine the number of times we planned to have this and we didn't have it. And today was the appropriate day the Lord said it should happen, and it has happened. So I'm so grateful for it.
Oh, I love it. It's I believe it again, and I believe the same as you, which is that you have to get to the root cause of the pain and you have to heal it from love. And that, the more Band-Aids we put on, the worse the situation gets, because
that's right.
If you're only ever treating the symptom, then you will just perpetuate that cycle and you will continue to feed it. And it just becomes never ending and ongoing. So, speaking to yourself, organizations that are really getting to the root cause issues and approaching it with love and not anger, not blame is so important. Right. You cannot alienate the one half of the gender that needs to be there at the table, because no one can do anything by themselves. Everything comes down to group effort. And if all you're doing is throwing blame and shame, trying to control a narrative to benefit one side because you're angry at the injustice of it, then I believe that that's just fuel on the fire. That's just pitting people against each other. And I love what you said about, encouraging forgiveness. I think that's such an important part of the message, which is that understanding that it's a triangle. There's three sides, and every side needs to be addressed. And you guys are doing that. And it's remarkable. I'm so in awe of you. Thank you so much once again. And I really look forward to working with you here in the near future. So everybody that's listening, stay tuned, because I'm going to be bringing you some cool information. And I look forward to partnering myself with Sustain Cameroon. So
thank you very much. It's a blessing to us.
No, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Disclaimer. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not necessarily reflect the opinions or viewpoints of the host, producer, other guests, or sponsors. I, Rayanne K. Irving, am not, nor have I ever been, a doctor or therapist, and none of what I say is intended for professional or medical advice.